Welcome everybody to the Serpent Tarot for another pick a card reading. So today's reading is episode 4 in the series You Through the Houses. So the series where we look at the astrology associated with each house of your natal chart, and we do a reading that looks collectively at some of the energies and influences and so forth and how they impact you through the lens of that chart. As with the other episodes, if you've seen them before, you're familiar with this construct, but if you're new to it, I'll just go through how the readings, the video is going to be structured for you. And the first bit is a very high overview of the fourth house, what that's about, because that will be contextual when we get to the pick a card selection for your reading and how the structure of the reading is going to go, so you understand where we're going to with it. Then there will be a section which is about the astrology for the fourth house. And it's a section which, if you're an astrologer, you'll know all this already. You don't really need to listen to this bit. Or if you don't know your chart, if you haven't seen it, then it may not be of interest. Though then again, you may listen to it and think, oh, I suspect I've got this sign in the house, or it sounds like I might have those planets or whatever. So it could resonate for you. But it's primarily for people who aren't thoroughly familiar with astrology but who have their chart, it's been done by an astrologer, or they've gone onto one of the sort of free sites and you've known both your birthplace and birth date but also your birth time, so that you can know what signs are in which houses. Or potentially, even if you have to know that anyway, because you'd have to know, I was going to say, maybe with the planets you didn't have to worry about that, but you do, because you won't know what houses your planets are in either unless you know what your ascendant, midheaven, IC and so forth are. So for this section to actually really make sense to you, unless you want to just feel into it intuitively and you're just interested, you really need to have that detail. So for many of you, you may skip that part of it if you want, but I'm doing it in each just to give a higher level amount of detail and nuance for those who do know that they can then consider when they choose their reading and when we go through the reading and they see what resonates for them. And then we'll have the pick a pile bit. So as I say, if you don't want to listen to the astrology section, you can just jump to that and then we'll go into the readings. So in terms of an overview of the fourth house, it's a really interesting house. Obviously your astrology chart in total tells you about you across all the various elements of your life, but I think there are certain houses that are really key to who you are at a core, and others that are more key to your interaction with others or your career or your sort of creativity or whatever it might be. And the ones that I think that are really core to who you are the first house, because that's how you're seen. And if you've seen the first episode of this series, you'll have an idea of all of that. And the fourth house, because the fourth house, which is at the base of your chart natally, and where we talk about having the IC, which is again the literally the base point of your chart at the moment of your birth and your place of your birth, covers a couple of things. In a broad sense, it covers your sort of capacity for personal, emotional satisfaction, well-being and so forth. It's where you feel at home. So it is a very key idea about who you are. And I often say that I think the sign that is at the fourth house is maybe more indicative of who you are at your core than your sun sign, which is what you're developing into, or your ascendant, which is what other people see. There's something very, very core about it. It's also the house that reflects our family, our home, our childhood home, our ancestors, all of those sort of things that, particularly when we're talking about the childhood home, inculcate our sense of self long before we've started to self-actualize or determine things for ourselves. And to the degree that there are ancestral or cultural influences on who we are in the world, the fourth house is a very good lens to understand that. So it's about who you are at home, who you are at your core, your family, ancestors and foundations. So it's a very, very pivotal part of your chart, and one that has a lot of emotional imprinting associated with it. So when we go through the astrology, you'll get that flavour as I go through it for the signs and the planets, how that plays out. And when we get to the pick a pile section, I'm going to talk to you how I'm structuring this particular reading to try to get to the core of those things for you with this, and to get Spirit's advice how to maximize your satisfaction, your well-being, your happiness, your feeling at home in yourself and at home wherever you're living and with whoever you are living with. So that's the overview. At this point, I'm going to go into the astrological detail. So I'm just going to have done some notes from my own understanding of it, and then also supplemented by various sort of astrology sites that I trust, to try and get a very high level overview of it. And when I've gone through that, then we'll do the pick a pile section. So if you aren't wanting to hear the astrology, you can click off now to the pick a pile section. Okay, so for those of you who are still with me, I want to go through firstly the signs for the fourth house. So if you do know what sign you have, this may give you some extra information if you know which sign you have in the fourth house. If not, it might just be of interest. So if you have Aries in the first house, you probably have a fiery emotional clarity and confidence. It may very well have been developed in your home, either through being in a very vibrant, loud, constructive sort of home where ideas were tossed around, or potentially being in one that was conflict oriented and you had to learn how to stand your own guard. Either way, you have a very energetic soul. If you have Taurus in the fourth house, then there's a lot of care and physical devotion to you. The parental care, the type of parental care you got, and the sort of upbringing you got will really define for you a lot about what you find comfortable, what you find familiar, and what you find warm and secure in some way. You really enjoy the material world. You really want security in the material world. If you have Gemini in the fourth house, you may well have had a very changeable home. You may well have moved a lot. There's a sort of sense of energy, certainly a very intellectually dynamic home, maybe not always stable. Some people with Gemini in the fourth house may have had their parents break up, or, as I say, might have moved around a lot. So you probably seek for constancy, but then you also like the sort of push-pull of opposing views, opposing ideas and so forth, and you very much look towards the intellectual side of things, about communication, about how you get close to people, possibly more than emotionally close, you get intellectually close. If you have Cancer alternatively in the fourth house, which is in fact the natural house for the fourth house, a natural sign for the fourth house, so Cancer owns this sign, you have a very strong connection to your family. That's a paramount thing to you, and a very strong sense of inheritance of your family values, culture. You may well have a very strong sort of physical or otherwise sort of similarity to your parental line, that kind of thing. Emotions are very important to you, and many of you have a strong sense and capacity for gratitude. You can, however, find self-love a little bit of a challenge. You're sort of very protective of others, and you've grown up in either an environment where you needed to help give that, or one where you felt it and you want to give it to others. So there's a little bit of a balance about bringing that same caring to yourself. If you have Leo in the fourth house, then you have a lot of pride in your family, your ancestors, and so forth, or you develop pride in opposition to them, depending, I guess, upon the nature of your family relationships. Either way, there's fiery emotions and there's a battle for the self. You may have had a very dominant parent, but on the other hand, there's a lot of warmth in this around the fourth house, an incredible amount of courage and loyalty, very, very loyal person. If you have Virgo in the fourth house, you may have felt some lack in your primary home. Perhaps it was hard to get love or approval, or things always had to be in the right place at the right time and all of that kind of thing. A very sort of beautiful home to look at, but possibly one that was hard to sort of just have fun and grow up in. Otherwise, you may feel within your home life, within your family originally, within your home life now, and even within you, something needs to be fixed or healed in some way. There could be a kind of a residual coldness and a very strong connection to intellectual things. You need to feel at home, you need to feel intellectually engaged. If you have Libra in the fourth house, then there's a strong basis of your parents in how you look at self and the core of yourself. So you really do derive a lot from whatever the parental dynamics were. There's some disconnect though between what the apparent home is and the reality. So whether it looks like a very hallmark tradition type of family, but it's actually quite conflict based, for instance, could be an issue. Either way, fairness and balance are really strongly imprinted in you. And it could be either because you've seen it as a very strong example, or you felt that it was lacking in some way. If you have Scorpio in the fourth house, you've got strong ties to your family, but they're not always supportive ones. There's a great deal of intensity in all your relationships and really a comfort level with dark and deep emotions. You need to transmute and figure out the past in some way. You're capable of some of the strongest bonds of all and strongest family ties of all, but you need to be able to, and the people with you need to be able to go to the depths and look at things really squarely in the face. If you have Sagittarius in the fourth house, you might have found it a bit hard to feel at home, or you might feel naturally restless, or there might have been a lot of travel and a very big emphasis on education and the world as your home rather than just your home as your home. And you may well have taken that in. You certainly will have developed a very strong moral core, and it may sometimes detach you a bit from deep relationships. It's getting that balance between the sense of freedom and independence and the world is my home, and then establishing a home with the people that you love. For Capricorn, it's not the easiest sign to have in the fourth house. There's a very strong spiritual connection, but there's also a very strong sense of responsibility. You may have been a child who had to almost be the grown-up in the family for some reason. You may have lacked what felt like sort of power in the world and the structures of the world, so you now concentrate a great deal on that, in a good career and in having good financial support, that kind of thing. You may also have been in a very strict family or strict home, which you either now seek to replicate, or maybe you in fact want the opposite. But you will want it still in a way that is materially stable. If you have Aquarius in the fourth house, you're always searching for consistency, even though to some degree you are very quirky and unique and not always consistent. You may have moved home quite often when you were young, and there could have been a lot of changes in your home when you were young. So changes in parental relationships, siblings coming and going for whatever reason, just a sense of impermanence. Personal freedom is valued above all, and that is particularly emotional independence, which can sometimes make you feel a bit detached or a bit sort of on the broader philosophical side of things rather than these sort of intimate relationships. Lastly, if you have Pisces in the fourth house, family secrets or a lack of clarity might have clouded the childhood home. You might have had a sense that there was stuff that your parents were discussing behind closed doors that you weren't privy to, for instance. You may also have had a feeling of not belonging or abandonment. On the other hand, if you didn't, or even if you did, you develop very strong emotions. You're highly sensitive. You can pick up the nuances in a family dynamic or really anywhere very easily. And you're very psychic. So a lot of your understanding in a not clear environment is through that kind of psychic sixth sense. And it's almost like you developed it more within that family home. So that's the signs. If you have certain planets in your fourth house, that will also tell you something about where you feel at home and who you truly are. If you have the sun in the fourth house, you have a lot of pride and energy in your home, and privacy is very important. Protection of family is very important. Your home and what you make of it is part of your life path. It's a very intrinsic thing for you to have a good family, make your own family, or if it's not a family, in your own home to make it really reflect who you are and who you want to be. If you have the moon in the fourth house, you long for belonging, but you may be restless and you may change residence a lot. So it's sort of like there's an emotional calling to it, but maybe also a sense of transitory nature around it for some reason. If you have Mercury there, you're very imaginative. You have a lot of subjective thought, and you like to work from home, and you also like a bit of intellect and debate at home. You like a good argument, not a destructive one, but one that it really is sort of entertaining and challenging. For Venus in the fourth house, there's an interest in love that starts really really much from childhood. You kind of fall in love with the idea of love. You're an idealist. You love beautiful things. You love beautiful people. You love, and I mean beautiful in the very broadest sense, you care about love probably above anything. And you really look to have a loving home, either the one that you were in when you were young and then replicate that later. But there's a very strong sense of love as being a core part of who you are. If you have Mars there, you're very protective of your home. You're very protective of yourself and what is core to you. You can be fiery if you need to be to actually bring that about. You can sometimes be carrying some deep-based anger, particularly if you have come from a family environment or you're finding it hard to establish a family environment where you can feel protective of others and protected yourself. You may want to actually have the arguments rather than let them simmer. You're very, very likely to have a very lively family environment and home environment. You like stimulus and so forth. Would not like boredom. The other thing about Mars in the fourth house is you hate to be manipulated. So if you came from a family where manipulation was involved, or if you started to find that amongst whoever you were living with, or even just in general in life, you're going to hit that head on. You're not going to put up with it. If you have Jupiter in the fourth house, you have very strong instincts, particularly professionally. You want warm connections with others, and again, especially your family, friends. Very strong morals from childhood onwards, and a very expansive sort of home, an expansive sort of personality. You want to actually help others and be a benefic influence on people's lives. If you have Saturn there, that may have limited some of the nurturing that you experienced in your home. It can have made you a little bit cold or detached potentially, but it's really because of a strong sense of responsibility. It's not actually because you don't want to connect with others, but it's that you feel in some way that you have to take on a responsible approach to relationships in general and a responsible approach to life. You're likely to be very steady and very much the person that people would go to in a time of crisis because you're really steady. If you have Uranus there, you've got very unusual ways of thinking, acting in general. You're very quirky. That also means that you might have very modern or different ideas about nurturing, raising children, relating in general, very independent. Sometimes that makes you withdrawn. Other times it makes you sort of like a dazzling, charismatic, glamorous sort of figure around other people. If you've got Neptune there, this makes for a very complex and sensitive childhood, upbringing and so forth. Early life at home may have been chaotic or very emotional and unclear in some way. Could have been quite ideal, or you might have idealized it, but there's something that's not really precise or clear about it. You do long for a stronger sense of grounded and reliable people around you, people that you live with, or if you want to live alone, that there is a sense of groundedness for you at home. One thing you do need to guard against is being overgiving to others, because you are highly sensitive and because you pick up the sensitivities around you. There's a sort of a sense with the fourth house that you want to help other people with it, and it can go to excess if you don't fully understand the nature of the relationships you have. You could be someone that a lot of people draw support from, but you don't necessarily always find it when you're looking for it, for instance. If you have Pluto there, your early life might have brought up in you a sense of self-protection and secrecy. There might have been something a bit chaotic or a little bit underworldy, subterranean in your family relationships, in your parents' relationships, something like that. But on the other hand, it gives you a great love of depth psychology and of secrets and of getting to the core of things. You may absorb other people's fears and obsessions, particularly those of your parents. So if you sometimes feel uneasy about something, you're not really sure why, it may be worth thinking about, was this something that you've actually absorbed from others, and in particular from maybe the fears of your parents. So if you had a parent who was very, very worried about making money, for instance, then you may find it harder to take a period of time without employment. And even though you may feel it's fine and you're confident, there's a side of you that may sort of reflect the parental issue. So it's worth thinking about that when you're not sure about why something is making you feel disturbed, if you have Pluto in the fourth house. And lastly, Chiron is an asteroid, and depending on where it is, it can show stuff about the early childhood and about some of the wounds that we take from when we're growing up. So it's particularly important, I think, for this this video and for looking at the fourth house. When Chiron is in the fourth house, it can make for an insecure home life. It can make for the experience of or the fear of abandonment in some way. You could have taken on the black sheep of the family role in some complex family dynamics. But you're highly empathic, and one of the reasons that all this is happening is that you see very clearly and into the hearts and souls of others, and you'll be a healer on a very, very basic level. But because of that, it may not have been easy or simple as you grew up. Okay, so that's the overview of the signs and the planets in the fourth house. So now I'm going to be moving to the pick a pile section of the reading. So that will be in the timestamp. So welcome everybody who didn't hang around for the astrology bit. Welcome to the pile. And for those that did, I hope that was a interesting background for you for this reading. So as always, in these readings, I have 4 to choose from, and I've very broadly chosen some tarot decks and tarot packs, or tarot packs and tarot cards to represent the different elements. And I've toggled between the Emperor and the Empress because I'm looking at them as the classic parental figures within tarot. Now, I do want to say in anything that I talk about this, because we are going to talk about parental figures and so forth all through this, I am not ascribing gender to this. So this does not necessarily mean that you have to have come from a cis-normative family. Any kind of parental figures. It could also be that you had a single parent, in which case when we're looking at parental energies, it could be a combination, or you choose the one that really feels the strongest to you. So this is not meant to talk about mothers and fathers, but whatever parental influences and so forth you have, and whatever you would like to then manifest in your life going forward. So think of it as the energies of the Empress maternal nurturing side of things and the Emperor paternal structure discipline. But what gender the person had who took that role is not material here. So very important to say that for this, because we're talking about very sensitive dynamics, and it's very important that this is inclusive. But as I say, what I've tried to do here, so I've got representing the water signs, the water element, the Crystal Unity Tarot and the Empress for pile 1, representing the fire signs and the fire sort of elements around this, the Emperor card from the Flights of Fantasy Tarot for pile 2. For pile 3, representing the earth elements, I have the Empress from the Rebirth Tarot. And for pile 4, representing the air elements, I have the Emperor from the Dark Mansions Tarot. Now, you may be drawn, if you know what element your fourth house is in, to a particular reading, but that does not guarantee that's what this is about. This is going to be very much whatever spirit thinks under those sort of cards, and for the main people who are going to come to the reading, what that needs to be said. So don't feel constrained. If you knew, for instance, that you had an earth sign in the fourth house, but you really felt drawn to pile 1, go to pile 1. If you feel drawn to more than one, it might be that one is related to the sign you have and another is related to something you feel instinctively. So by all means, go to more than one if you want. It might be that the messages go across a couple of readings because it is collective. And in general, as I say sort of semi-regularly, and which I sort of say in all my description boxes anyway, this is a collective reading, and this is the fourth house in many ways to me feels like one of the most sensitive houses in all of the charts. So really do make sure that you only take on what makes sense to you and what is helpful to you and what you resonate to. Leave the rest of it, because remember, it's a collective reading. So when you know which decks to go to, the timestamps are in the description box below. Just to let you know very quickly what we're going to do. We're going to start with looking at the sort of family and ancestor influence on you. So your upbringing in your childhood home, your ancestors, all those sorts of influences on who you are and who you've become in the world. We're then going to look at the kind of home and person you would like to create for yourself, whether it's in a family or whether it's on your own. And then we'll have a look at the core parts of you that will come out in bridging between your upbringing into your ideal home life. Then we'll ask tarot about your journey to authenticity and self-acceptance and satisfaction. What external factors do you need to know about? And more generally, what advice would Spirit give? Okay, so when you know what reading you want to go to, check out the timestamps below and I'll see you in the reading. Welcome, Pile 1, to your reading. So these first set of cards is meant to give a bit of an idea about your childhood home or the environment that you're in. Some people who came here may not even have been in homes or may have moved between homes. So it's really just to give a sense of that childhood vibe, the sort of environment that you were in and so forth. And I am using the gods and titans and the goddess and siren cards here to give a bit of a sense of two primary nurturing figures, but it doesn't have to be two. It could be one, it could be a variety if you move between homes, it could be within an institution, whatever. It's just to get some general ideas, but I'll talk in general terms as though it was two people, but extrapolate with whatever works for you. What I'm trying to look at here is the influence of those nurturing figures on the experience you had in your home. And I might actually go first to a little bit about the experience because it's interesting given the energies that I'm seeing here. It looks to me as though there was in your family home a idea of what upbringing was, nurturing was, education was, all those sorts of things. And then there was maybe what you actually experienced and there was a bit of a dissonance. So in one of the astrology signs that I talked about before, there was a sort of sense of maybe a difference between what was seen outside or what was intellectually said to be and what was experienced, which is when, if that was Libra, so Libra in the fourth house, doesn't mean that you have to have had Libra in the fourth house. But the reason I say there's that sense of there's a bit of a different experience to what almost was the intended environment that you're in, is that here we have secrecy and broken dreams. So there is a sense that something in your childhood, you knew of something that was different to what was being purported to be happening, and a sense that you had dreams that you couldn't fulfill and you couldn't necessarily speak out about what your dreams were. Possibly you may have had a very different attitude to life or wanted to do something very different to what your parents or your family in general wanted. The interesting thing is that the two energies around the nurturers look as though they should be exactly the sort of environment where dreams are supported and where secrecy is not, because we have Maui, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, which is about discovery, and we have Nuit, which is the night, but it's about expansiveness. And when we look at the change energies around these, the sort of nurturing growth energies, for the discovery, which I feel like is the sort of more paternal, and as I said before, this is not about gender, but the more paternal element here. We have the hexagram 3 difficulty at the beginning, but it's about teaching, education, and so forth. So there's discovery, teaching, and so forth. Though it is interesting that the totem with it is the wolf. And so that suggests to me a sense of a very different way of doing things, and almost maybe a sense, at least from the paternal side or that side of the dime, that there was at least one nurturing figure around you who wanted to teach you, but almost through your own discovery. It's the classic parent who does not give too much instruction in riding a bike because they think that you will learn just as much by falling off the bike a few times and scraping your knees as you would by a lot of care and support while it was happening. There is certainly a sense of independence and curiosity was wanting to be engendered in you, and probably was. You probably did take that on. Over here with what might be the more maternal or supposedly nurturing side of it with expansiveness, we have the 53rd hexagram, which is about development, and that's about step-by-step beginnings and growth, and about transformation with the butterfly. So it feels as though the other parental figure, or two sides of the one, as I say, it depends on your scenario, was about taking step by step to transform who you were and to have you grow in a way that became very beautiful with the butterfly and very unique with the butterfly, and it expanded your horizons. So there is an overarching sense of a parental influence that wanted you to be able to learn and become who you were. That was the theory. It's very much the sort of energy that you would see with parents who wanted their child to go to sort of one of the schools that were a little bit more modern and EQ oriented, for instance, rather than just the traditional, private school and then Ivy League college or whatever. And there is a sense of becoming who you are. But with this energy, something else was going on as well. So whether or not it was theoretically that you would do that, but there was still a very strong sense that that meant you should end up like them in some way. Like maybe you had a sense of, I want to actually do the private school, I want to do the Ivy League and so forth, and this sort of feels a bit wild and bohemian, and you weren't that. Or whether this was theoretically that, but at the end of the day, the secret under everything was that you were meant to excel. Like there's definitely a sense here that you were expected to excel. Like it was almost like your parents could have been living their dreams out through you, and you were meant to be this unique, beautiful butterfly, this really powerful, expansive wolf. You were meant to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and to shine, maybe in a way to make your parents shine. Like there's something like that. There's an energy within that is a little bit out of balance. It's theoretically looks great, but there's something here where something you wanted to do, something that you wanted to be, didn't necessarily accord with what they wanted. Now, I'm getting for some of you, it might have been that your particular learning pathway needed a more conventional or more step-by-step approach. There might even have been some conflict between your two parents. The paternal side might have gone, no, let them make mistakes. The maternal side might have said, no, step-by-step, gradual. Some of you may have had particular learning approaches, like you may be neurodiverse or something. You needed a different approach and so forth. But if that's the case, it's almost like that was kept within the family, not to be discussed for some reason. So my overarching feeling is that you had a family that put a huge premium on learning, growth, becoming, really excelling at something. But there's something that wasn't being looked at. There was a shadow of that wasn't being looked at. And that had some impact on, I think, even your belief in your dreams or your capacity to get your dreams. So I think that part of what you would be looking at in creating your own home and in who you are at a core is reclaiming those broken dreams and being able to speak more openly about it. Okay, so let's have a look at the cards that we're also under that really look at the kind of home you would like to make and the kind of person you want to be. So these are the cards for that. Now, firstly, I have feelings oracle cards. And if these are positive feelings, then that will be what they are. If it's negative, it's what you were trying to move away from, and may give us some more information about any of the kind of shadow stuff here. So we have confident and tempted. Okay, so I think that really is you understanding here that there was a dynamic going on that didn't have that much to do with you, and you just want to be able to be confident to be you and to be able to be as strong as you need to be. But there may be a little bit of residual thing about here where some of you may feel you still want to prove something to a parental figure, for instance, or prove something about who you are as opposed to what was being said. So knowing that you're stronger than you think is an important thing here, but the confidence is a key part. And if you were to have children of your own, or in your family life, if you're living with people, you want to be able to feel that you are confident and that you won't fall back into patterns where you maybe felt you had to be silent about what you wanted. We have mental clarity, that makes a lot of sense, and connection, and emotional freedom. Okay, so mental clarity, I think, as I said, makes a lot of sense to me. I think that there's something, I think that you knew when you picked it up. I think you were highly sensitive. I wouldn't be surprised if you had Neptune in the 4th house, or possibly Mercury. I think there's a really acute mind operating here that could see beyond the theory that you were growing up in and the kind of almost mythology that your family had. It may even have been, I've got if there were more than one child, there may have been a lot of competition that was engendered between the children because it was all about this growth and excellence and transformation and expansion in some way. You saw through some of that. You saw that there was a disconnect. So you want in your life, and what is really important to you as a person is mental clarity. I think it's an interesting thing about the difference between education and mental clarity, because we can conflate intelligence with how many facts we have or how many disciplines we've learned or whatever it might be. When in actual fact, intelligence is a kind of mental clarity. It is a capacity to take whatever information we have and to look at it rationally and in a sort of linear and sensible way and do something with it, problem solve, understand the world a bit better, those sorts of things. So I think that you value mental clarity over just being able to recite a lot of facts and probably the sort of things that you would have potentially done creatively or at university, as opposed to the early childhood years of education where it's largely about reciting your times tables and so forth, the kind of the retention of facts, which is very valued when young. So I think there's that. You want the mental clarity. That helps you get confidence. It also helps you stop moving towards things that are emotionally pulling towards you, because I think there's a lot of a subcurrent of emotional stuff around being seen and validated in this family environment you came from. But it gives you that, and it allows you connections that are going to be positive for you and to bring positive relationships into your family life, love life, friendships or whatever. This requires emotional freedom. There's a big emotional toll with this, I feel. I think that most of the people who've come here, if you've come to the right reading, there was a big emotional toll in living up to the sort of educational and developmental standards of a family where it wasn't really quite what it appeared. And if you were different to that, you weren't really supposed to speak it. So you want the clarity, the connection, the openness and so forth. So what are some of the energies that are a bridge for you between what you came from and what you want to develop? So firstly, I have a goddess card. This is meant to pick up a sense about your nurturing side. If you were to have a family or with your friends or even self-nurturing, then we have some archetype cards and a companion card. Okay, so we have Sophia, Wallflower, and Night. Okay. And the constellations of isolation. Okay. I think that many of you did feel isolated. Many of you did feel like a stranger in a strange land in your own family. You were, I think, able to jump through the hoops quite a bit, but they weren't necessarily the hoops that you wanted to jump through. And because of that, part of the bridge for you is to be other people's protector, other people's support. You don't want to push yourself forward, though. I think there was something highly competitive in your family. I think maybe you were pitted against your siblings if you had siblings, or you were even competing against your parents because that was something about them that they were trying to live out through you. So I think you not so much that you're a wallflower, but I think that you are kind of introverted and you don't want to push yourself forward, but you do want to look after other people. You do have a sense, though, I think, about whether or not you have decided to be alone rather than have a family. And that's fine if that is what you want. This talks about the constellations of isolation. So there might be a part of the bridge for you where you don't go into relationships or living with other people unless you're very clear about with this mental clarity, what the dynamics are. You have a great deal of wisdom. Part of the bridge for you is a great deal of wisdom. Sophia actually means wisdom. Sophia is a Gnostic goddess, and she is the creator in a way of the world through the demiurge under Gnostic belief. She is a very benign energy and has a very high level understanding of things. So what this card says is share the intuitive wisdom you hold in your soul with your sisters and your soul family. So it may be that this is saying that you stay isolated or you stay on your own until you know that you're with your soul family, that somehow you didn't feel like you were with your soul family when you grew up. It doesn't mean it doesn't have to even have been a terrible family. I don't feel like it was terrible. I just feel like it wasn't what it appeared to be. And it wasn't probably your natural place, but it's very likely you were born there to understand that, because there's something in you becoming you that is the support for others, and which isn't about competition and pushing yourself forward, but is about the wisdom about relationship and when it works and so forth. So that's very interesting. So let's ask the tarot. What is your journey now to that sort of sense of authenticity, self-acceptance, self-satisfaction, feeling at home with yourself, given this dynamic, pile one? Okay, so firstly, I think this is if you do relate to two parental figures. If not, it may be a particular aspect of one parental figure, but the one that connects to the Emperor, the one that connects to this tough love learning, that's really the sense I have about this tough love learning. It's probably been the dominant impact on you. But on another level, it is also the thing, if you release yourself from the expectations of that figure, release yourself from the drama of it all, you can actually go out into the world and not be so much of the wallflower. You could actually claim more of the limelight than perhaps you're thinking you want to at the moment. I do think that you kind of come to think of competition as a bit toxic, and putting yourself out there is a bit toxic. Like this, some of you with that original spread could have been one of those sort of children that was expected to enter all the spelling bees and win all the prizes and be the first in your class and so forth. So I do think there's a side of you that shies away from that and has a greater wisdom about what true development is. But I think it is saying that there will be a time to let go of that, particularly that dominant tough love energy, so that you can start to be in the world and complete who you want. At that point, you're likely no longer to be alone. But it does suggest that for many of you, if you're with people at the moment, then it's sorting out that sort of energy. And if you're living alone, and I think many of you might be, then this is saying eventually you will come out of that. You will find the connections that you need, and you will find that sense of being at home in yourself, but also at home in the world. I do think that many of you may travel a lot, may live in many countries during your life and so forth, because that's picking up some of the expansive energy and the transformative energy over here. I think there's been a bit of an imbalance. So I think that what feels like the maternal instinct over here, which was to step by step allow you to expand and grow, was maybe overshadowed by the tough love. No, here's what it needs to be in the material world type of energy. But you can reclaim that by releasing yourself. It's really a mental prison. That's why mental clarity is really important to you. So let's have a look at what external factors are impacting you right now in your sense of being at home in yourself and being your true authentic self. Okay, so this is really confirming that family is having a fairly big impact, and it could be that you're in another family now and you're sort of working out to what degree you've replicated this thing and you're really trying to sort through that, or it could be that you are still completing your understanding of that family dynamic and how it impacted your dreams and so forth. It is very possible that there's a sibling or someone else that is getting the approval, getting the attention. And it doesn't have to even be in a family in this case. It could be just replicating that sort of a pattern. It could be at work that there's someone else who's getting the approval and the promotions or whatever at the moment, while you are the more authentic sort of person, but you're feeling a little bit constrained. Part of that is about you actually have to decide to let go of that wallflower energy. You have to start to come out and speak your truth. I think you did it when you were young and it didn't go down well. So I think you've kept silent all these years. But I think the reality is that this is saying the external things around you, there's potentially, again, it may still be this maternal influence. It may be for some of you that your maternal influence could be helping you with that, or it could be that you are coming across someone like that in your life at the moment, in your career or friendships, who is helping you make those decisions. It's really just coming out of the mental conflict. The only thing that imprisons you, Pile 1, is this mental imprinting from a family where I think the theory was great, but the practice left a bit to be desired. Okay, so let's have a look then at some energetic advice for you. So we're firstly going to use the Queen of the Moon to look at a couple of energies from moon cycles. And then we'll get some affirmations from a crystal chakra deck before we look at how to bring all this together. Okay, we have focus, Oh, and we've got a butterfly again. There's something very much calling here towards whatever that maternal side of things was. It's part of it for you. It's part of the resolution of it in one way or another. And beauty. Okay. So I think on a very basic level, that's focused on what is beautiful to you. Maybe you weren't made to feel beautiful. Maybe you weren't made to feel lovable in some way. Maybe you had to always perform, always excel, all of those sorts of things. And on one level, that has trained you to focus. I mean, your mind is very, very, very strong, which is fantastic. It's just that at the moment, you're using it against yourself to some degree because of the patterning by the looks of things. If you could turn that focus to what, and that mind to what is beautiful, you can really bring in what you want and can release all these sorts of energies. Release the Queen of Cups, the emotional authenticity, who I feel very much connected to the Sophia goddess watching over you, this sense of wisdom as opposed to just knowledge. And I think that's the thing. You are all about wisdom. This environment you were in was all about knowledge, but you were all about wisdom. Once you actually focus on the wisdom and what you have, you see the beauty in what you do. And I think there's a deep sense of forgiveness in this too. I don't feel like harm was meant. I just think that you really were trying to meet this requirement, and to some degree that's still permeating who you are at a core and permeating how you think about your home life and who you should be in your home and all that kind of thing. But focusing on what is beautiful to you, I think, is going to really help. Let's also get a couple of crystal chakra affirmations for you. So we've got the sacral chakra, which is all about creativity, and the root chakra, which is all about security. Okay, so this is just on its own saying to me that two of the key energetic things for you around who you are at a core now, your life in your family now, any residual stuff from your upbringing, it goes right to the base of who you are and creating who you are. This is why the butterfly is important. I do think a butterfly is an important motif for you at the moment. I feel as though in many ways your childhood was like being in the chrysalis, like being the caterpillar. But that process breaks itself down to create the butterfly. So I'm feeling, what I'm getting is that it may have seemed strange and it may have been hard at times, even though I don't think it was awful, but it may have seemed hard at times. But this was to create the butterfly, and you are far more along that line than you think, and you are far more beautiful in who you are and your wisdom than you realize. And it's seeing that you can be secure in your capacity to create who you are. That's where you get your validation from. That's important. So the crystals around this, for the sacral chakra, which is around the creativity of yourself, you have citrine. That's about creativity, and it connects it to happiness. Maybe I'm getting that for some of you, you may have been brought up to think that academic and professional outcomes were everything, but you were really a creative person and you felt you had to hide that a bit. If that's the case, this is reaffirming creativity as happiness. If that doesn't resonate, then it's really just saying creating yourself. The affirmations are, I create endlessly and I choose to be happy. So yeah, don't dwell in where you felt less than or that it was tough, You're not going to replicate that with others. That's not who you are. You're actually a much kinder sort of energy than I think you grew up with. Then we have the root chakra with red jasper, and this is about rectification and boundaries. So you're setting some boundaries around parents that I think, or a parental influence or an educative influence or an ancestral influence that did mean well. Like I do think that, but where you need the boundaries so that you can be true to yourself and not have the broken dreams. And the affirmations are, I establish healthy boundaries and I rectify my mistakes. Now that's interesting. You may have actually got some real issues whenever you got something wrong. That might be why you kept very quiet about who you were and so forth. It might have been, as I say, I get this very strong, relentless feeling of exceed, excel, be top of the class, be this, be that. And so I think this is about taking that back. You recognize your mistakes and you see them as growth, not as something that somehow fell short. Because I do think there's that kind of energy around this for you. All right, so to close off, I first want to use the White Owl Mystic, which has other astrology symbols, sacred symbols, moon states, all that sort of thing, as a kind of another sort of sense about some of the prevailing energies in your fourth house at the moment. And then we'll use the Astro Chakra cards to have the final balance. Okay, so you have Jupiter, the March moon, and Venus. It's very, very interesting that the March moon fell between what feels to me, again, like the maternal side of this and maybe the paternal side with Jupiter. So the March moon is about no longer avoiding something that may have been painful or may have been hard to look at. So there is something here, I think, which is about no longer avoiding, owning your own wisdom, your own knowledge, your own capacity to create your world, and to not be a reflection, say, of your parents and what they desired, but to be more a reflection of what you desire and you want to create. It's very interesting. Jupiter, as I say, feels like, again, this paternal side of things. And it is a benefic planet. It's not meant to be a bad energy, but it can be too much. Jupiter can sometimes be too much. And it's interesting that we have noise over here, which is about expansion. And Jupiter is sometimes about expansion as well too. And with Venus here around love, I just feel as though for many of you, the love nature has come more from the maternal side, and you cherish that more to some degree. But there was a kind of a interplay between the two. For all that it looks as though the more maternal side was prepared to go more step by step and see an individual transformation. If we connect all these things together, we see the Serpent in the Jupiter card here is a bit like the knowledge, sort of the wisdom and knowledge or whatever that you can get, but it comes from the expansion of the maternal side and the love nature. So there's something in here about really facing up to that and understanding how that impacted your sense of self-security and your creation of yourself, but owning your wisdom, because at the end of the day, I feel like you were ahead of your parents. I think this with Sophia there, with a kind of Gnostic snake there and sort of Venus and expansion all connecting, it's really saying you need to understand that you're ahead of that and you are very capable of creating what you want to create into your new home life and into who you are as a person. You just have to believe it. So let's get some Astro Chakra cards to finish off to give you a little bit of advice in how to do that, pile one. Okay, so firstly, with intuition, with the sixth chakra, so the third eye chakra, you are actually very telepathically dialed into people and so forth. You have a high degree of empathy. That's why you knew what was going on under the surface of whatever the apparent idea of the family was, and had a very strong effect on your emotions. So really starting to see that as a form of wisdom and maybe bringing the mental clarity to it can help. Again, creativity is going to be important because that's how you have change. That's how you have transformation. Your Uranus there in the second chakra is connecting to this, finding happiness through being who you are, your individuality, and changing that which no longer works for you so that you own your own power with the solar plexus chakra, and then you can have the self-discipline. I just get this sense that you were brought up to think there were certain things you had to achieve, and that Saturnian thing with Saturn was, in a sense, the father of Jupiter too in Greek mythology. So there's that very strong sense of this action, achievement, orientation, but this should be you taking back the power and deciding what your self-discipline can create for you and what's emotionally resonant, getting back to that Queen of Cups. So I think you're probably quite brilliant. I suspect your family saw that. They may well have had other brilliant children. It might have been that sort of a scenario. Whatever your family background was, I think that you were ahead in a way, but you were also expected to jump through a lot of hoops. And now it's about owning that, owning your own wisdom and creating a world where self-actualization is what you want. The butterfly is what you want, not just fitting into particular ideas of excellence. So I hope that that resonates for you, because quite a heavy thing to be dealing with in many ways, but I think it was also an incredibly powerful thing to understand about yourself and work with. So I hope it resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. It's pretty deep, so I'm not sure if enjoy would be exactly the right word, but I hope it resonates for you. And if so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you care to share about something as potentially very personal as this in the comments, by all means do so. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future episodes of this series and more generally in future readings. Welcome, pile 2, to your reading. So these first cards are meant to give a bit of a sense of the home life when you were growing up. So whether that's in a sort of two-parent family, whether it was moving between families, however it might play out. And this card is meant to pick up what we would traditionally think of as a paternal type of influence, so one around order, structure, ambition, and so forth. This is not about gender, as I said in the introduction, and this is like the maternal sort of energy, the sort of nurturing, caring, emotional sort of centre of whatever your home life was, with some of the energies that these figures, or figure if it was two sides of the same person, were demonstrating to you as you grew up as part of your formative years. And this is a little bit about the experience that you had. Now, this is interesting. If you have come to the right reading, pile 2, there's something almost legal about what is going on here. So you may have come from a family of lawyers, or you may have come from a family of academics, or people who very much were intent on the right order, the right regulation, the right way of doing things, maybe a very strong spiritual culture that had very strict rules in some ways, and which, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it was around balance, it was around doing the right thing, a very, very strong sense of a moral core here, and a formative sort of element for your spiritual practice. And when I say formative, that can mean one of two things. It can mean that you end up following what your ancestral or family line do, or it could be that you do the exact opposite. A bit like with politics, you can either end up voting the same way your parents did, or never vote the way they did ever. So it just depends on how it impacted, but there's a very strong sense of what is right here, what is balanced, what brings all the various forms of, and maybe even a sense that there's chaos if you don't do it. So it may have been a family where there was a real sense of law and order, or there was a lot of other sort of movement, like having to go from town to town. So having a very strict regulation on how we operate within the family is very much there. The fact that we have the 60-second hexagram here from the I Ching, which is called preponderance of the small. Now, that does not mean small-minded or anything like that. It is the details. It is about law. And it talks about impeccability, correction, virtue. This is very, very important with the gospel here. So, and with the crow energy there, a real sense of a kind of severity, not necessarily bad. You didn't necessarily suffer for it. It really depends on who you are and how you want to develop as to whether this would have felt like a straitjacket that you worked against, or whether it was something you felt very comfortable with. There's definitely a sense in your family about the right way of doing things and so forth. And also about home being more important than anything, with Vesta there. The home, the family, that's the key. You know, we look after our family, we look after each other, we are with each other, and we are a team. So here with the 44th hexagram, which is coming to meet, it's about equality, propinquity, synergy, teamwork. The raccoon is a totem that is about working together and working in harmony. So this could be a classic family that had sort of social justice people in it, or people who worked in humanitarian causes or humanitarian law. But certainly there is a sense of the family was a very strong unit, and they worked very strongly together, maybe in a regimented sort of way. It could pick up people who lived in foster homes or something like that, and found themselves in a particularly impactful home where everything in its right place, everything is done properly, and so forth. I'm also getting it may have been that, particularly if you were in something like the foster system or something like that, there was a home that you finally found where you felt safe because everything was done in a kind of correct way, maybe after some chaos. So that's quite specific, but I think, you know, possibly someone who's come to this reading could relate to that. The thing that it developed in you was a sense of perspective. You could see, I think, the value in all of this, but equally, if it was too rigid, you would see that it was too rigid. So it's probably going to differ from person to person who comes here. The perspective that you bring to it, to the traditions and so forth, would either make you have inculcated to the point that that is really part of who you are at a core, or conversely have moved away from them. So let's have a look then at what are the kind of elements and so forth of the home that you would like to create, or the sense of self that you would like to create. So starting with feeling oracles, which if they're positive feelings, they're definitely something you want to create. If it's negative, it's something you want to escape. So that may tell us something about that if there's anything negative. Then we'll look at some of the other energies around it. So we have excited and fascinated. Okay, so this is very interesting with that kind of energy that you're coming from. It could mean either. It could mean that you feel such a stable foundation, such a sense of what is right and wrong, such a sense of a moral purpose, that every day is exciting, and you can be fascinated about what you see in the world and what you learn in the world, because you feel you have a very solid foundation. That's the best side of it, I would guess. The other thing could be that you are now exploring your interests rather than those which were imposed by a more strict family regime, and you're excited about that. You're excited to see what else the world has, what other moral or spiritual foundations, etc., could be around. We've got growth and harmony. Well, you certainly like the sense from this maternal side around the family, the friendships, the harmony, the teamwork is important. I think for most of you, it was, even if it was a strict family, potentially, it was actually quite a positive one by the looks of things. I'm not feeling that you're trying to break away from it. I'm feeling like you may do it differently. You may have a different way of looking at it, and you might be excited about what that means for yourself and for those that you're close to. But it feels as though you definitely agreed with the sense of harmony and a sense of growth, that is connected to something stable and so forth. We have forgiveness. So that's probably the one element that would suggest there maybe was sometimes a little bit too much of the rules and regulations and not enough of the caring. That suggests that this side of the parental paradigm was a little bit more dominant than this side, but you are more drawn to this side. You're drawn to the harmony, the forgiveness, and so forth. Though I'm getting that for some, you might have come, as I keep getting legal, might have come from a legal family, and the family may have been into defence law or something like that. There's a great warmth there for all the structure, which is lovely, and there is a sense of excitement, which is lovely as well too. So I do feel, even if it was a bit constrictive or a little bit by the rules, you're open to forgiving that. I think you can see what came out of it, and I think that you really particularly move towards this harmony side of things for what you want in the world. So what's the bridge for your core self? So we're starting with a goddess card, which is meant to show your nurturing nature for yourself, self-nurturing, and for others if you were in a parental role or in a love relationship or friendships and so forth. Then we're going to look at some archetypal energy and some companion sort of energy. What kind of companion would you be seeking or would you be looking to be? So the goddess energy is Ocean, cleanse, okay, which talks about protect your energy. The archetypes are intuitive and earth and gifts of the lonely path. Okay, so this deck is about dealing with loneliness and companions in various forms. So there's going to always be a little bit of a sense of that anyway. But I think this is definitely saying that there is a part of you that is going on your own way. You're not exactly replicating the gospel of your family, but you are taking what worked there, and you are taking the teamwork side of things. You want to ground it. You really do like good material outcomes, and I think that side comes out there. But you're highly intuitive, so you move towards the harmony side of it. And I think you have a little bit of a mission in life. I think that it's not just about cleansing your own energy, because I don't feel like your energy has been particularly weighed down by this, but I think that you have a cause. I think there was a cause in your family of some form, even if it was just the cause of doing the right thing in some sort of prescribed way. I think that you want to do that. You want to replicate that sense of doing the right thing, doing it in a very grounded, intuitive, empathic sort of way. And if that sometimes means you need to do it on your own, then that's fine. You have a lot of inner strength coming from this, a kind of a foundation. So that's really lovely. So let's have a look at where you're at with tarot at the moment, with your sort of pathway to self-actualization, satisfaction with self, satisfaction with home. Okay, so again, justice again. There's something about social justice, the legal world, the structures and the rules that we live by, that is definitely part of who you are. You have taken that in, though I think you've turned it on its head to some degree. With the Emperor reversed over here, I feel like that Vishnu energy has been changed in some way. So I don't think you necessarily believe everything that your family believe, but I think that you do believe in the underlying intent of it. You're just turning it on its head, and you're getting to the point where you're going to stop keeping that to yourself. You've sorted some things out. That's why you're going into a growth phase in some way. And for many of you, for that reason, it may be that you are getting into a relationship at this point in time in your life, or thinking about living with people rather than living alone. If you are already living with people, it might be thinking more about taking whatever you're doing with the family or with your life more out into the world. You're not fully yet ready to do it with the Ace of Swords reversed, or you may have attempted it in the past and it didn't quite take off yet because maybe you didn't have quite the right people around you. If you are trying to do something different to your family, I think it may be that you've still had very strong connections to all of those and networks. You may well have, particularly say if you had come from a legal family, you went into the law, but you want to do the opposite side to what your family did or whatever. You've got networks that are part of that past that maybe aren't really going to be part of your future. So there seems to be a move to finding more about what the right people are for you. But there's a lot of balance in it. It's just, and I don't feel like this is a rejection outright of your parents or anything like that. It's just that you want to do things a bit differently. So let's see what external factors are impinging on your sense of self, sense of being at home with yourself, all of that kind of thing at the moment. Pile 2. Okay, so it's interesting, in one of the other readings already, I've had the Ten of Pentacles come out in this line about the influences, and it's Ten of Pentacles is classically the family card. So, that and the Ten of Cups, the two of them together, are classic, stable families. So I think this is definitely saying there's some sort of, your concept of what justice is and so forth in many ways is impacted by the family that you came from, the background, the ancestors that you came from, the culture that you came from, something that is of long standing and a legacy. And I think there is also a capacity for you to bring a new legacy in with the Ace of Wands there. So I think there are opportunities possibly coming through a female type figure. So it doesn't have to be a woman, but there's a feminine energy around the Queen of Swords. It's very much about a thought process. It feels as though there's maybe something new that you can bring in your career creatively or something like that, that you will have potentially a sponsor or a patron with the patroness there as well too. So something I think is coming along, and it allows you to come out of that sort of sense of, am I a bit straitjacketed by my family and my family's reputation and what my family expects of me. But you're never going to walk completely away from that. It's just that you're going to do it differently. But I think there's a new figure coming in that feels, as I say, female, feminine sort of energy that really, really is going to fire you up to do what you want to do, to be the Queen of Swords here rather than the Emperor reversed and so forth. So I think there's a lot of promise for you around this, particularly around, I think, actualizing who you are at a core through some sort of career or some sort of cause coming up in the near future. Okay, so let's have a look at some energies around you to help you with that. So firstly, the Queen of the Moon Oracle. Attraction and action. Okay, there's definitely something like this could be this person coming in, and that could be more than just a professional thing. It may be a relationship with attraction, but it could be attraction to someone who thinks similarly to you. There's certainly a sense of you're drawing the energy that you want in so that you can take action. That's that Ace of Swords. So something's coming for you, Pot, something, a real opportunity, a real connection. You may have already met it, and you may be taking it to the next level, particularly if it is a relationship that may be a love relationship or in your home or something like that. But for many of you, I think this is about attracting the right people to you, the people who are in sync with what you want to take from the heritage and legacy of your family, but also have a different vision, a different way of doing it that gives you the support that you need for that. So what energetic support can you get in affirmations from a crystal chakra oracle? The sacral chakra. So this is about what you create for yourself. And the third eye chakra, bringing the connection in, the attraction. I think there'll be a meeting of the minds with the people that are right for you, whether it be in love or in career, and you'll feel it on a kind of psychic level before you even necessarily have the sort of earth-grounded idea of what it could be. So I think you've got a bit of a sixth sense about that. With the sacral chakra, which I feel in the context of this reading is about the creating yourself, we have the sunstone, and that talks about luck and radiance. That's why we've got this sort of like wands energy around you. That's why we get the sort of really bright colours around ocean cleansing through, becoming who you want to be, all that kind of thing. So I think there's the very strong creative element for you in whatever you do. And as I say, it doesn't have to be that you're working in the law. It's just I feel that for some of you this is going to be the case. But for others it may be contracts around a creative project or something like that. The affirmations are, I believe that luck is on my side, and I think it will be. You've got the foundations that you need, and luck is on your side. Something, a really good opportunity is coming through, which will really impact who you are and how you feel about yourself. And I project an everlasting radiance, because you will do that. You will draw people in. That's part of your attraction. And then over here with the third eye chakra, we have blue chalcedony, and it talks about self-perception and lightheartedness. The affirmations are, I change my perspective to increase my understanding. So that's the only real energy I get around this. That's why we've got perspective here. It's like, I think you understand what does work for you from your home life and upbringing and what you are different. And I think you're quite comfortable with that. I think that's why everything is coming into play. And it says, I sometimes allow myself to be carefree. So there is something very responsible about all of this, but being able to bring that different perspective and have fun sometimes, brings again in that sort of Ace of Wands energy and so forth. And action doesn't always have to be about outcomes. It can just be about enjoying yourself as well too. So to close out, I want to firstly use the White Owl Mystic for any other oracle guidance for you, and then we will use the Astro Chakra cards to bring it all together. So this is just to sort of see whatever other elements are operating in this fourth house for you at this point in time. So I think this is partly giving us a little bit of more information about that Three of Wands and the Ace of Swords, that was reversed, and then the Ace of Wands that comes forward. The December moon is about letting go of that which hasn't worked, and the July moon is about repairing things that can be so you can take something forward. And this is all about action with energy. So I think that there's something going on in your fourth house, in who you really are and how you're going to establish yourself in the world, that has to do with how you want to express yourself, that takes from your tradition but is new and is different. And you maybe tried to do it and didn't quite encapsulate what that was different in the first pass, but you are going to have an opportunity soon where you'll be able to take action to really bring forward what you did want to do with that, so it isn't lost, because there's something about legacy with you, and it's your legacy as well as your family's. So to bring it all together, let's have a look at the Astro Chakra cards. Okay, so firstly we have, again, the third eye chakra. So definitely, again, saying that you have a kind of telepathic connection to people and would probably know when the right people were coming in. It's very emotionally connected too with the moon, with intuition. And I'm getting that the cycles of the moon, there's something about that. That's why we got the moons twice there. It will give you some guidance around the energies and around when you feel at your best. Pay attention to that, because you will know when your intuition is at its height by understanding how you respond to the moon. There's something about the base of who you are here, around your survival, around your career, around making money, around the home base, all of that sort of thing. And again, there's an emotional side to that around security. So you do value, I think you probably felt secure in this family. I do get, for some of you, you may have moved between families for some reason or had a broken family or something like that, but there was a period of time or a sequence of parental figures that did give you a sense of security and the right way of living in the world. And I think that connects, and you'll never let go of that completely, but you're meant to actually understand your own wisdom with Jupiter there in your solar plexus, in who you are in the world, and to honour that, but to honour it just as much by being true to yourself as by just replicating it. So there's a process of, it's like carrying the candle or the torch forward, like in an Olympic race or something, but you are carrying it forward to do something slightly different each time. That's what the legacy is about. That's how you honour yourself. That's how you stay true to your emotional core, and that's how you bring your wisdom in. It's a combination of your emotional, intuitive wisdom with the legacy that you take forward. So I hope that resonates for you, Pile 2. I hope you enjoyed the reading. I actually think there's a lot of promise for you coming up, and I hope that comes through quickly for you and that you're happy with it. If you enjoyed the reading, please like the video and subscribe. And if you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear about it. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future episodes of this series and more generally in future readings. Welcome, Pile 3, to your reading. So these first cards are meant to give a bit of a sense of the formative family home life that you had. And so, as I said in the introduction, it doesn't necessarily have to be a mother and a father. It could be a same-sex parenting arrangement. It could be a single parent. It could be living in foster homes. It could be any number of things. But I am, to some degree, going to be talking in terms of what might be more a paternal sort of male end of the consciousness spectrum, actions, discipline, structure, competition, and feminine end of the spectrum, feminine consciousness, nurturing, caring, love, and so forth, as being either in a single person if it's there, or in two people, regardless of gender or anything like that, just because most dynamics in families will have some elements of both those things when children are being raised. And then this is around some of the energy that creates. Now, what I would say for people in Pile 3, if you've come to the right reading, you came from a very dramatic family. I think that as long as it was a partnership there, and this is like not so much if it was a single parent family, but if it was a partnership, I think there was a lot of dynamic love and caring, but I think it was probably very intense. It feels sort of like Scorpionic and Leonian or something together. It feels like one moment, your parents were sort of madly in love and really sort of like focused on each other, and other times there was almost a kind of a standoff. And I think that the more maternal side valued and kept the peace for the much more active, passionate, dynamic sort of paternal side. And as I say, please don't think about gender here, but there was, I think, either there was one person, if it was a single person, they had two sides to them that were really strong. One was really passionate, went at everything, really got into it, really got obsessive, and then another time really just needed time out and to sort of, close the door and meditate or something. But I think for most, you're in a very dynamic household, lots of loudness, lots of busyness, lots of energy, really kind of exciting, but maybe a little bit overwhelming sometimes. And I think that you probably vacillated between this sort of energy, which is all about having a grand passion going for what you want, and the mental busyness of the fly here. So in the I Ching deck, there are some that go beyond the hexagram. So this isn't a hexagram, but this is just an animal totem. And the mental busyness of the fly can bring delirium, festering, agitation. It's where things get a bit overheated or a little bit sort of too focused, or workaholic. You may well have had a workaholic parent or workaholic parents. They may not have been around a lot, and when they were, it might have been all very dramatic and so forth. But there's definitely an energy, a high degree of energy around this environment for some reason. But also, conversely over here, the white buffalo woman is about peace, and it is about almost worthiness in a way. And we have this 20th hexagram, which is about contemplation, with the dolphin totem, so that kind of sense of wisdom. And this is about prana and nowness and being awake. I am getting for some is sort of like it was almost the household was always on, like it might have been hard to get sleep sometimes. I do think though that at least one parental figure or the one sometimes just kind of had to completely keep everything sort of quiet and still. So it's almost like you'd sort of vacillate between lots of noise and busyness and so forth, and then the absolute need for quiet and stillness and so forth. And that could have been a dynamic or a tension between your parents, but I feel like they really loved each other. I think that was there, but I think that the possibility here that they were very different on that level is quite strong. Certainly there was a strict order to things in your family with hierarchy. If you had siblings, depending upon where you were in your first, second, third or whatever born, there was probably almost a hierarchy there. And I think there's a kind of a sense of the mental busyness and the work and the creation and all that becomes hierarchically a little bit more important than just breathing and taking time out. That's why I get a sense of workaholism potentially in this environment. What it brought out in you, understanding that there was sort of all these sort of hierarchies and rules and, you know, time when it's meant to be busy, time when it's meant to be quiet, must listen to your elders, all of that kind of thing, is that you responded rather than react. You went very much into this breathe dolphin sort of Zen type of thing. At its best, it taught you that kind of internal peace, to be peaceful within even the most loud, rambunctious family. But the issue can be with that sometimes you feel silenced in some way, or that your needs are not being considered because the needs of your parents look so major. It looks like the parental figure here needed to be always sort of like passionately doing whatever they were doing, and this parent looked like they always needed to have some peace and quiet, and so it can be a little bit hard to be a child in that environment. So I think you had a real sense of you didn't have a lot of power, but it wasn't a boring environment. It's just that I think that you tended more towards the I'll be quiet then and contemplative in some way. So let's have a look at what you'd like to create in a home life or within yourself now. So we're starting with some feelings cards. If they're positive, then that's something that you're taking from this that you really want to keep using. If it's negative, it's things maybe from this environment under the surface of the hierarchy that you want to distance yourself from in some way. So we've got regretful and yearning. Okay. So first thing I'm going to talk about these actually before I put out the others. So regretful here, because it is a sad sort of card. I release blame and guilt. I think there may have been, I think it was a very passionate home in many, many ways, and lots of sort of role playing going on in a way about, you know, what was the right thing to do and who should be top dog and all that kind of thing. I think that you may carry a certain amount of guilt or regret from that environment, so you want to let that go. You want within yourself not to bring in the same dynamic, to be able to find a better balance for yourself and to be able to speak. And yearning, I fulfill my heart's desires. I think you need to find the place where you get to be Eros, going after what you want, and when you want to, you get to be the white buffalo woman having the peace and quiet to contemplate as well. You wanted kind of the drama that your family was showing. And it's possible even you had siblings that got closer to it than you for some reason. As I say, if there's a hierarchy of order of birth or something like that. We have ancestry, so very strongly connected to all of this. And the drone, oh, okay. And life purpose, all right. So this is picking up this energy in particular, I think. The ancestry here, I think that you have inculcated a sense that busyness, following your life passion, your life purpose is the thing that you're meant to do. That is the bit that you really did admire. You might have hidden a little bit in the quiet, peaceful thing, but you really did believe that it's like many of you might have had a very strong parent who was very vibrant, very successful. You kind of looked up to that, and maybe that was something that was in the ancestral line as well too. So you want to carry that forward. That's part of what you yearn for, but you don't want to end up in this dynamic of push-pull. And you don't want to end up as a drone. You don't want to just be kind of working just for work's sake, because it may well be that there was a lot of burnout operating there as well. So you know that you want to take on the sense of creative energy, professional energy, preparedness to do the hard yards, all that sort of stuff, but not just become a worker, to create something that has some legacy and it has a life purpose. You yearn for a life purpose. I think it would have been very hard in this environment for you to really even get enough peace and quiet really within yourself to know what that life purpose was. So I think you've had to start to look into what that looks like and really start to think through what patterns you've taken from your childhood that are going to work for you and what ones might burn you out in some way or take you away from your life purpose. So let's have a look at what the bridge is between these. So I'm going to start with a goddess energy, which is around you as nurturing yourself and nurturing others, a couple of archetype cards, and then also a card that's around companionship in what is, in a sense, our essential loneliness, our essential individuality. So the goddess card you have is Nekhbet, which is about nourishment. Feed your soul, explore what makes you feel inspired. Yeah, you need to find that. I just don't think there was a lot of room for your voice in this very loud, very, very busy sort of environment. So you need to go back to what nourishes you. What are you yearning for? Because in nourishing yourself, you then will be able to nourish and nurture others. Yeah, you're carrying a bit of a wound. Artist, all right. And love forgives distance. All right. I think for some of you, both of these parents might have felt a bit absent at times, whether they were literally absent or not. It's a feeling I'm talking about here. It may be that one parent was so much a workaholic that you hardly ever saw them, but you kind of admired them and you want to have that same passion, but it is wounding to you. The other may have always been, as I say, trying to shut the door and get peace and quiet and all of that sort of thing, found it hard, found family life somewhat overwhelming or whatever, and instilled in you a sense that it is good to be able to sort of not react, but just to sort of observe and so forth and be a bit zen about things. But it's interesting because this love forgives the distance. So you do love your parents by the looks of things, or you love this background, and there's much of it that you want to bring forward, but you want to do it far more artistically. I feel like this is far more kind of corporate or something like that. You're an artist and you're going to take some of your wounding to create your art. And to nourish yourself and to nourish others. Your wisdom and your goddess watching over you there is to nourish you by you transmuting the wounds that you had from that and the distance that you felt into art. That's how you don't become, the drone. That's how you don't become sort of just one of the masses going to work every day, which is, I think, something you don't want to do, because I think that's what you saw happen. I think this is how you become more creatively vibrant. Okay, so let's have a look with tarot about where you are at the moment on your journey to self-actualization and self-acceptance and self-satisfaction in the fourth house. Okay. So I think you are still processing some of this stuff. You're still sorting some of it out. With the Ten of Cups reversed, you're still looking at what didn't nourish you in your family. I think you probably spent a lot of time alone as a kid. I think you really had to learn to nourish yourself, but it was a painful process. And I think you kind of feel like your childhood was stolen from you to some extent. You may even have had to almost take on the parental role with your siblings or something if both parents in one way or another were a bit absent and so forth. So there's something like that you are still working through and still letting go of, still forgiving from the past. And that has made you not be certain yet about what it is that you love and you want to do, but it has something to do with creative art in some way in whatever career that you do, and self-expression and in bringing balance. See, I think that was what you wanted. It's very imbalanced energy that you come from. So bringing balance and being able to take that out into the world, your art will have something to do with balance. It will be about balancing the creative fire with the sort of peace and serenity of understanding the flow and so forth. It will be both observational and also active in some way. So I think you are now at that point of understanding the value of the balance and what that can do for you creatively out in the world. But I don't think you've yet fully worked out what you love enough. And that's what you have to work out. What do you love enough? Not what did you see your ancestors, your parents do? Not what did you stay silent about so that you didn't sort of stir up the energy in the household? What do you love? And it could come out through a relationship, a romantic relationship could bring it out, but it could also, as I say, through your art. So let's ask what external influences are on you at the moment about getting to this point of self-nourishment. Okay. I do think many of you, as I say, might have had like siblings or something like that. With the Three of Pentacles reversed, it just makes me feel like you had some siblings and there was something about the order of when you were born and what your roles and responsibilities were and so forth. And that's still something you're sorting through, and it is having an influence on how you view the family in some way. A lot of drama around it, really, a lot of drama in general. I think that you may be still processing a lot from that time. You might still be living with your original family and that's why this is happening, or it might be that you've still got to process some of those issues. I do think that you're on the way to doing that. There's some opportunities coming for you and some clarity coming for you, and that will help you work out what you love. And some of it might have to do with education or the development of skills in some way, whether it's artistic skills, whether it's something that you've studied, whether it's in a career and you're developing a sense of yourself and how you can do things. I get the sense of that, work smarter, not harder, because you look like you have been working hard and there has been demands. And I think there's a part of you that goes, am I going to end up in this energy? But I think there's a kind of work smarter, not harder energy there that is going to bring things more into balance. But you do look like you have been working very hard. It does look like you have taken on that ethos from your family. But there's stuff about who got the attention, who got listened to, what the hierarchy was within the family, whose needs were met. I just feel like you were told to consider everybody else and nobody was considering you or something. Like everybody else's emotional needs were met and yours weren't. But I think that you are working out how to create yourself, and you are heading into a time where there's more peace of mind around it. So let's look at some of the energies around you. Let's firstly have a look at the Queen of Moon, what the Queen of Moon Oracle can suggest for you. Assessing. Okay, and power, yeah. Once you assess this, see, I don't think that any of this was in a malefic way. I just think it's overly dramatic and it's overly heated. If you can get that higher perspective and assess the environment and assess all those patterns, you'll get that peace of mind and you'll work out how much you've developed out of it, how you've learned some really important lessons about not overworking or avoiding it. Like to get the balance right, to be able to have power, which again is this work smarter, not harder sort of energy, to release that power that you have. That it's not just about where you sit in a sort of family order or in an organisational order. There's something about the skills that you can bring to this and that artistry and understanding it that allows and releases the power for you. So let's get some affirmation energy for you. The third eye chakra, so sort of psychic connections with others, and the root chakra, which is the base, who you are at the base, really sorting that out through getting the right connections in a way with the right people and understanding the energies that are around you. So with the third eye chakra, we have lapis lazuli, and that's about inspiration and contact. The affirmations are, I am inspired by the world around me. So you find it inspiring. That's the artist in you. And I am forever in contact with my higher self. So yes, it's like that's higher than the hierarchy, like it's we answer to a higher party, and that's where the nourishment comes from. Than our parents, than our work, anything. We answer to our higher self. And that helps us create what we need in terms of security in our home. And the root chakra is very much connected, I think, to the fourth house. And this has ruby in it, spontaneity and motivation. The affirmations are, I allow myself to be spontaneous. So yeah, don't feel caught up in the hierarchies. And I feel motivated to achieve my goals. And I think my goals are the thing there. My goals, not the goals of everybody else. Not what's going to make everybody else happy. It's what is going to nourish you. So to close out, I want to use firstly the White Owl Mystic Arcana to get just a few more pieces of like energetic information around this, about the core dynamic operating in your fourth house, and then we'll use the Astro Chakra cards for final advice. Okay, so we've got two moons here, and one is about sort of realigning your sort of purpose and so forth, and one is about going within. So I think that there's a very strong sense here again about your goals and so forth, and I think Virgo is grounding that, and it's you having a grounded, stable sort of situation. I think one of the things that you really want is you want a stable home life, a stable sense of self, a stable career. You don't want to just work for work's sake. You want it to be nourishing and creative, but you want it also to be stable. And so what this is saying is, relook at what has occurred and go within to understand what's going on. Go into that third eye chakra. If you do that process, then it helps you get to this grounded level. It helps you create something that's sustainable, that does have that sort of sense of growth and connection to ancestry and all that sort of stuff, but it's on your terms. Okay, so let's get some Astro Chakra cards to close out the reading, pile 3. Okay, so the first step about this is to go to the core of who you want to be, because we have the root chakra, which, as I've said, is very much connected, I think, to the fourth house, who you are at home. And there is an importance to assert yourself. So if you are still in this environment, you're going to need to assert yourself in some way, even if it's just to sort of like put some parameters around what you do in the family and what you're doing in your life in more general. If it's in your career, it's asserting what your ambitions are. If it's in a new love relationship, it's asserting what you want from a relationship. It could be that you could unconsciously go towards someone who's always busy and not there, for instance, but and think, well, love forgives distance. But I think that you need to assert what you need in that space, depending on how this is playing out. There is definitely something about your heart and caring. I think you care very much for these parental sort of figures. I think your family in general, I think you love them a lot. But you have to get the balance, because this is like Saturn and Uranus being conjunct, between the discipline, the focus, the work, and then the individuality. See, what's going on here is sort of like obsessive workaholism and almost a kind of withdrawal and a retreat. But the balance you really need is between the discipline and then the creativity. You kind of went into the retreat because that seemed to be the safest spot by the looks of things. But for you, it's about finding what you love and nourishes you on a creative level, and then creating the discipline, your discipline, what you've learnt from this side of your family to connect to your individuality. If you do that, that's when you assert who you are at a core level. So I hope that resonates for you, pile 3. I hope that you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you do know how this works out, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future episodes of this series and in future readings in general. Welcome, pile 4, to your reading. So these first cards are meant to give a bit of a sense of the family environment in which you grew up when you were a child. And in broad terms, this card inside is about what you might call the paternal side. It doesn't have to be about gender. And as I said in the introduction, you could be in a single parent family, and this could be just different aspects of the same nurturing figure, or it could have been in a number of families, or you could have, had one parent and one left and a new parent came in with a marriage. It could be any number of ways this works out. So this doesn't even have to be the man in any sense. It's just the paternal, the kind of the rule giving, the action, the structure and so forth, and the maternal, the nurturing, caring, loving side, with certain aspects about their personality, and then what you experienced as a result of that. I feel as though, presuming this was two people, and if it's not, it might have been just sort of like a warring sort of thing within the one person, two different sides of the same coin, but presuming this is two people in nurturing relationships for you, I feel as though one was always sort of seeking out the other. And so one person over here is all about focus and about getting to the depths. We have which is a god of focus. You can sort of see he has the arrow. He's looking almost for his prey. He's looking for the thing that he wants. And when we have the 29th hexagram, which is called the abysmal, it doesn't mean they're abysmal, but it is talking about getting to the depths, particularly the watery emotional depths. It's about undertaking, going for it, the flow, getting into the flow, finding, in a sense, the quarry, finding the depths, really understanding things. And with the cormorant bird, that bird can go into the water. So I feel as though there was a very strong emotional side to what might have been seen to be the paternal side in this thing, and a wish to really get to the depths. But I feel as though they were constantly trying to get close to the other party, the maternal side over here, because that's focused on self-love and personal authority. So this card is not actually one of the hexagrams, it's beyond the hexagram. It uses the cardinal bird, and it's about autonomy, pride, being unrestricted. I just feel as though you saw over and over a kind of a chase between one person and the other person for their love, for really understanding, getting to the depths. It's like one almost worshipped the other in a way, and the other wanted to be worshipped. There's that sort of thing. It could be for some of you that you grew up in an environment where one of the figures, and it feels like the one that would have been more maternal or meant to take the maternal role in some way, was a bit narcissistic maybe at its worst. Otherwise, it's just there was a kind of idolatry going on. And I get the sense that it meant, and it was meant to be sort of like really understanding things. And I suspect in the nurturing there would have been this dual message of really understand people, really care about people, really learn about people, maybe even psychologically, but also stand in your own truth. In terms of two energies for you to replicate, one is about getting to the depths and understanding people. The other is about truly standing in your own power. But I feel as though attempts you might have made to do that, because this dynamic was so strong, were either not seen or were resisted in some way, or you felt you had to resist because you thought, in a way, this dynamic wasn't what it appeared, because we have distorted perceptions where reality is rarely what we are raised to believe it is. So it may be that you felt that this was all about supposedly emotional authenticity, and this was all supposedly about self-actualization, but what you were seeing was a pattern of one person chasing the other all the time that didn't seem to be reaching for either what they were gaining. It just feels as though you saw a dynamic that wasn't what it appeared to be, and that I feel like you almost felt a bit separate to it. You were just sort of like watching it for some reason and resisting it because you didn't want to go to the depths emotionally if it was towards someone who was not going to meet you there, and you didn't want to just be yourself if it meant that you couldn't connect to the depths. It's an interesting dynamic that I think you were watching play out. And if this was in one person, then they showed two very different sides to you that were confusing, and you felt always it wasn't quite right. It was distorted in some way. So let's have a look at what you would like to create for yourself within your own nurturing, and also within your own home life, etc., which could be different from or replicate some of this. What the sort of dynamics around it. So firstly, around feelings. Okay, we have inadequate and excluded. Okay, so when the feelings cards are negative, they're meaning the intent of this reading was that they are to indicate things that you want to move away from, that were maybe underlying things in the dynamic in the past. So I think this did make you feel excluded and inadequate. I think it would. It's like watching some sort of grand Shakespearean romance drama playing out all the time. And I think you would have felt that way. So you want to have somewhere where you belong, and you want to have somewhere where you feel you're worthy, that you're not meant to look up to this person or follow this person to the depths. So you're wanting to move past the perceptions that made you feel not good enough or not seen because of the intensity of whatever this dynamic was. We also have optimism and mindfulness and maturity. Yeah, because look, there is something almost a little bit immature about that. The irony being that it feels like this person thought they were a great psychologist and this person thought that they were truly authentic, but there is something really kind of almost a little bit immature about the energy that you were watching. I think you want to be more mature. You want to be more honest and authentic. You want to be able to be optimistic, but you want to also be very clear, the mindfulness, understand the impacts of what you're doing, understand the dynamics. You could very well have been a truth teller in a sort of narcissistic sort of family with this sort of cards. And what you want to do is make sure that you don't have to replicate that. But the good news is I think you're very, very well aware of that dynamic. You aren't likely to replicate it. So what's the bridge? What do you need to nourish and nurture in yourself, and then what are the kind of archetypal energies that you want to bring about, and the kind of sense of standing on your own 2 feet or companionship in terms of your 4th house. So we have Aphrodite. Oh, isn't that interesting? Aphrodite twice. In this deck, it's feminine power. I embrace my sensuality and deepen my inner love. I seek beauty in everything. Beauty in everything. You see, in this deck, there's a lot about self-love. And I feel in this dynamic it's got distorted. But I think you do think that love is important, and you do feel that true love and connecting on an emotional level is there, but it should be about feminine power, not about something that feels a little bit more hollow there. We have the Rebel, Pisces, so you're very sensitive, very psychic, very sensitive. And we have the Truth comes softly. So I think that for all that you saw this, I think you have a lot of fondness in many ways for your parental thing. I think you see it for what it was. You do know it was a bit distorted. You've maybe gone through some therapy or something to deal with it, or you're just naturally empathic. And this is the thing, there's nothing really soft about this energy. This is very craving of dominance and the spotlight. And this is very, very intense and kind of obsessive. I think you would prefer something that wasn't distorted by the extremes of that. You would like soft truth that is about love on all levels, and which allows you to be a bit different, allows you to rebel against that pattern and feel stronger in your sensitivity. I think that you may have felt too sensitive to deal with this environment. And so there's a side of you that wants to rebel against your sensitivity, but also to own it and give it that sense of authenticity, your own sense of authenticity. I think you can see in this parental dynamic, if it hadn't been distorted, there would have been something quite interesting and good to learn from. It's just that it was distorted for some reason. Okay, so let's have a look at the tarot for where you're at the moment in your journey towards authenticity, self-actualization, satisfaction with your life, with yourself, with your home. Okay. By and large, I think you're well on your way. You've had a lot of aha moments. I don't think any of this, if this is resonating for you, none of this is new. You've understood it. You have started to make your own journey, do your own thing. You may have recently moved out of this home environment actually with the Knight of Wands, or you may be someone who moves around a lot, and that's part of how you're creating who you are. But there's a lot of freedom. You have a real sense of freedom creatively and otherwise. And you have worked out what you want in terms of more balanced, more reciprocal arrangements, because there's something that was unbalanced in that. It was this one's giving all the attention to that person over there, and it's unbalanced, and you know that, but you've already determined for yourself what a more balanced sort of relationship pattern would be. And you're very, very skilled at being able to bring this into being. You really are with the magician in very, very sharp mind, really clear. Like you're very clear about this. You can see the distorted perceptions. You are alchemical on that level. I think there's still some tension potentially with the female figure, or some stuff or the one that feels feminine in this, as I say, the one that wanted all the love and all the adoration. I think there's still some stuff to sort through there, but whether it's literally with them or whether it's just sort of like finally kind of divesting yourself of that so that you own the Aphrodite that's right to you as opposed to the one that you observed. Okay, so let's ask what external factors are operating on your sense of self, your sense of being at home, pile 4. Okay. If you've been living with other people, or, you know, you moved out and you've been living alone or something like that, I actually think you're going to change where you live in the not too distant future. This looks like there's something impermanent around the current residence, really. That it maybe hasn't been as freeing as you would like it to be, but it's all part of the process of working through the emotion. Some of you, if you're not in a relationship, I suspect one's coming, and I think that it's coming at this timing because you have freed yourself of some of those patterns. You're very clear. You've got to the magician energy there. If you are in a relationship, then I think there's almost a renewal of what was loving in it coming, which is really good. You're certainly very hopeful and you've got good reason for hope, but I just feel as though there's something shifting. Some of you may literally be moving out of this original home, as I say. That could have been picking up there. If so, there's good relationships and good balance coming in, and you're very optimistic about it. This might be partly also picking up a little bit of residual stuff around this figure as well, the sort of more paternal figure. But I think for most it's not so much a person as it is a situation. So I think you may be heading into a period of time where you move residence a bit, or you're about to move, but it's all about processing and finding the right place to live. It's almost like finding the right place to live and possibly the right people to live with are what it's going to really bring that optimism in and bring that balance in for you. But I think it's very positive. I think you've really done a lot of work on this by the looks of things. So given that, let's have a look at some energetic stuff with the Queen of the Moon Oracle around you at the moment, pile 4. Growth. Yeah, I do think you're going into a growth and attraction. Yeah, I think if you're in a relationship, it's going to have a revival and move to another level, I think, or you're going to move together somewhere or what. There's something like that happening. If not, you're bringing love in, I think. You're bringing in this because you've done the work. You are in an expansion period, a growth period, and own that, you know, and it'll happen fast. Things around you in the next year or two are going to happen very fast. Your life, where you live, who you're with, how you feel about yourself, how you've actualized, you're in a very big, expansive growth period. Some of you may be experiencing a Jupiter return in your chart because that's often what happens there. So that happens every 12 years. So if you're sort of around a birthday with a multiple of 12, then that might be the case for some of you. Let's get some affirmations for you, though I think things are looking pretty good. Yellow fluorite with solar plexus and the root chakra. So this is about personal power and who you are at home through your personal power. Makes a lot of sense for this reading. I got something as I was shuffling those cards, so I'm just going to put it out there. I got that some of you might write something amazing based on the dynamic that you saw in your original family. Like if you wanted to write an amazing screenplay or something like that. There's a lot of drama around it, you know. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in it, so I'm just putting it out there. Okay, so the solar plexus chakra, as I say, is about your personal power, and we have yellow fluorite with that, which is about harmony and optimism. So yeah, you're coming into a very optimistic phase. The affirmations are, I am in harmony with nature and I choose to have an optimistic outlook. So yes, have the optimistic outlook. You are moving into a growth cycle. You don't have to replicate what was in your family. You don't even have to particularly castigate it or deny it. You just become who you are. And with the root chakra, with ruby, we have spontaneity and motivation. I think that one came up for another, so some of you may have come to a couple. In this case, it goes, I allow myself to be spontaneous and I feel motivated to achieve my goals. So yes, you're heading into a growth phase. Who you are, who you want to be, where you want to live, who you want to be with. As I say, it's a very positive time period for you. So to close out, I'm going to use firstly the White Owl Mystic Arcana for just a little bit more information about the patterns that we're seeing here, and then we'll use the Astro Chakra cards for a synthesizing message to complete it. Okay, so I think that the movement from the maiden, which is sort of like in the sort of maiden and the mother and the crone kind of concept, I think that's picking up Aphrodite. I think that's picking up, you don't have to be female for this, it's picking up that sort of stage of first getting out in the world and creating and bringing in what you want and so forth. So I think that's excellent. I think it's also suggesting a kind of innocence, that you watch this with a kind of innocence, but now with Saturn you have the wisdom, you have the structure and the understanding about what's happened. For some of you, you may have gone on to do something like study psychology. I wouldn't be surprised if this figure had a very strong psychological bent. So I feel like for many of you, part of the reason why you're so prepared is that you've, whether done formal study or whether it's been just of your own personal interest, you have the structure and the understanding and the wisdom around this now, and the capacity to really create something solid that's got a very Capricornian feeling to it. So it's, you could bring something into the world, you know, something that could be incredibly good for you financially, amongst other things. With the August moon, it's time to harvest certain things. So there's some work and some things you've done already. You're meant to actually start to take what you've learned and what you've got from this and take it forward in some way. I do think that many of you are meant to make quite a lot of money, maybe make a name for yourself or whatever, and it's got something to do with understanding this dynamic and how you can make it a more healthy dynamic, or make it a dynamic that is gentle but brings the truth in a soft, gentle, but nevertheless, you know, healing sort of way for people. So let's finish off with the Astro Chakra cards. File 4. Okay. So communication, I get a sense for some of you, you're going to write something, you're going to create something, you're going to bring a message out, you're going to work in fields of communication or psychology or something, bringing your Neptunian inspiration in, and that's going to allow you to explore your dreams. I think you watched other people's dreams play out in a grand scale in your family. I think it's time for you to communicate and explore your ones. That brings you to personal power with the solar plexus chakra, and the energy and passion to do what you want. Plus, I think the passion of potentially a really positive love relationship. And finally, with the third eye chakra, so connecting to others telepathically and so forth, you find your inner self, your sun, your life purpose. There's something, you went in and through this dynamic because you were meant to have almost accelerated learning path, because there's something about how you can see it, understand the distortion, bring things into a structure, maybe communicate it in a way that's going to help other people. It's going to be part of who you really are. You may indeed have your sun in the 4th house. So matters of family, self-actualization, what it is to be true to yourself, may be very much a part of what your life purpose is. And that may be why you've seen something where somebody wanted to go to the depths and somebody wanted to be the heights. If you see that, you start to understand about those two elements within the psyche, and how that impacts on how we feel about ourselves, how we relate to others and all that sort of stuff. There's some great wisdom in this that you have, that you're going to bring to some form of creative project or business or something, definitely. And you're definitely going into growth. And I think you also have a very high likelihood, if you're not in a relationship, to find the right relationship soon as a result of the emotional maturity that you have developed. So I think that's very positive, even though I think it was a fairly dramatic childhood. Probably was entertaining, but dramatic and not always peaceful. So I hope that resonated for you, Pile 4. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear about it. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future episodes of this series, and beyond that, in future readings in general.